Thank you again. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where in the world you might be joining us from. My name is Rob Rebar. I am the Director of Events and Marketing at Power to Fly. Very excited that you are here with us for today's conversation inside the Get Hired process, real strategies and real stories. So, very excited to have our featured speaker, Tauri StClaire, join us in just a little bit, but I just wanted to share some real quick housekeeping with you all. I want to go to the next slide. And great. So here you can see our code of conduct. So just, it's a lot of text here, but to summarize, it just basically says, don't be a jerk. We're all here to have a great conversation together. So again, let us know where you are. And I see lots of people adding. We've got the Philippines in the house. We've got South Carolina. We have India, Ireland. Oh my gosh, this is so super global. Brazil. Portland, Oregon. So, Los Angeles, Jacksonville, Florida. So great to see you all, Jamaica. So, thank you all for continuing to introduce yourselves. Yeah, just take a look at this code of conduct. I'll be sharing it in the chat in a moment. And I do like to always preface that the content shared during Power to Fly events is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute legal advice. For specific legal guidance, please consult a qualified attorney. And now let me just tell you a little bit more about who we are here at Power to Fly if you are new to us. If we want to go to the next slide there. And yeah, here you can see we are an organization that helps attract top talent and retain engaged employees with solutions that simplify recruitment, enhance employee satisfaction, and drive long-term business success. We are a 100% woman-led company backed by Morgan Stanley, and we have folks in our network all over the world. So if this is your first Power to Fly event, welcome. Hopefully it's not your last. We host pretty much weekly virtual chat and learns, which are all free. A lot of those give you a chance to really expand your network and to connect with companies that are hiring. And we also host pretty much monthly virtual summits and job fairs as well. Our next event in August is all going to be about emerging technologies coming up. So do check that out. And you can just go to powertofly.com and see our full schedule. But now, without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to today's featured speaker, Tauri StClaire, who is an instructor and enrollment counselor at Power to Fly's partner, Skillcrush. So Tori's break into tech story began at Skillcrush, and it continues to this day. So now, as an enrollment counselor, she shares the inside scoop on what it's like to go through the official break into tech program. Prior to her career change, Tori spent 10 years as a front desk administrative assistant and credits her organizational experience as a key to helping skill crushers get and stay on track. Motivated by a lifelong passion to advance diversity, inclusion, and accessibility and understand the systems that shape our communities, Tori attained a Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science at the University of California, San Diego. And she's also a queer Latina. So we're very excited, Tori, that you're joining us here on the last day of Pride Month here in the US. So happy Pride Month, Tori. And I'll turn things over to you to take it away from here.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction, Rob. And hi, everybody. Happy to have you here. Happy Monday. All right, let's get rolling. So first, I would like to just kind of go over the structure of our Get Hired program and everything that is offered and a little bit of insight into the why. And then we'll move on to some presentations from other alum that have joined the Get Hired program. Unfortunately, our alum that we wanted to have interviewing with us today could not make it. But we fortunately have a lot of just footage from the people who have made their dreams come through by going through our program and entrusted us with the process. And it has worked time and time again in a way that we're really excited to share with you. So this is going to be inside the Get Hired process, real strategies and real stories. Oh, so sorry. I didn't have time to edit the presentation for this, but we also have the manager of the Get Hired program here with us, David McDonough. So we can just kind of imagine that we've input his name here. So just to kind of go over where I'm coming from when I mention the Power to Fly's partner, Skillcrush, we're an online education company with a singular goal, which is to help career changers land new jobs in tech. Our job is to get you a job. And we do this with the Get Hired track. And we've developed an innovative, structured job searching program that clearly outlines the steps you need to take to get a job offer fast. We provide dedicated human support for every step, and this is a major overarching theme and key that we believe makes a huge difference because being hired is an incredibly human process. Even though it can feel a little bit isolated sometimes, we know that connecting those dots between humans is what makes the difference. So, when landing the job, you'll have support from our career coaches who are here to provide you structure, encouragement, and accountability so that you can achieve your career change goals. I went through each of those things in that list really quickly, but there's lots of layers to all of them that are really priceless that make the program work. You'll have one-on-one resume and LinkedIn reviews, one-on-one mock interviews, one-on-one career coaching calls, and weekly group career coaching with a group of other people trying to get hired at the same time as you. You'll have unlimited email support with your career coaches and a private Slack channel exclusively for job seekers. So, human support is often the deciding factor between a successful career transition and an unsuccessful one. And that's why I want to emphasize that so much. And when I go over all of the skills that we teach our students, it'll really kind of become a lot more evident why. We do this because we believe that tech is for everyone, and that includes you. Of course, we want everyone to have access to tech jobs, which tend to be high paying, have high career flexibility, and have high job satisfaction. But also, we believe that tech benefits from being more diverse. Everyone uses tech, so tech should be made by everyone, and that is a core part of our mission. So, in the Break Into Tech program, we teach students a whole set of skills that are completely separate from the technical skills that they already have, whether it's through a program like Skillcrush. We also teach career changers the skills in order to work as web developers and web designers, or if they've already been working in tech, or if they are coming from another kind of related industry like cybersecurity. The technical skills are one thing. Actually knowing how to function in this modern job market, how to understand how the tech industry has evolved, what hiring managers are looking for, etc., is an entirely different beast. So we know that learning this set of skills is what helps our um our our you're working with us, or I guess our clients, yeah, or to help them bridge the gap, help you bridge the gap between just having your set of awesome skills and actually getting your job that you want and having that career that you've been dreaming of. So I'm going to go over these real quick. A big part of it is marketing. And a lot of people who are working tech jobs are not, necessarily pursuing marketing. They might be into digital marketing. Design has some aspects of that, but a lot of people are not. And it's feels like it's should be intuitive. A lot of what you learn when you're in marketing, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But there's a reason why people go and get full graduate degree level degrees in marketing. It's not as intuitive to think of as you think. It's kind of this amalgamation of things where, somebody tells you, have clear and direct ways of speaking, be concise. Much easier said than done. And that's one of the reasons having coaching and having people that are on part of your team kind of giving you outside perspective and coming from a ton of experience of what hiring managers are looking for, what the tech market is looking for, helping you understand how to do that. And who you're marketing is yourself. And mastering LinkedIn is a big part of that. Not only how you market yourself on LinkedIn, but how to function in that marketplace. Resume building is also a part of what we teach and is really a huge part because as I think I've heard it, hiring managers spend like less than 10 seconds looking over the materials that you have presented to in order to market yourself. So and as well as your portfolio and how you market yourself on that portfolio need to be cohesive and need to be very direct and concise. And we also teach how to organize and track your job search. As we'll be sharing in a lot of our student testimonials, this can be a really big game changer. Some of you may have been on the market before and thought you were doing your best, but I can tell you from personal experience, I learned a lot of things that I had never heard before that have completely changed how I structure and how all of our students have structured how to find job applications and how to apply for them and how to track them in a way that is really pertinent to the other things that we teach in our program, which I'll get to in just a second. Finding and applying for jobs is part of this. Time management is a huge part of it because it's very time consuming to do all of this. And if you are in tech, you understand that you are always learning in tech. So continuing to learn tech things is part of your time management, and all of that is quite a bit. Especially if you might also be structuring a career pivot while still working. So that's a big part of what we provide in coaching. And then what I mentioned before with prospecting, with the parts of tracking that can be really open a lot of doors for you is integrating that with a prospecting process, which is finding connections, finding human connections at jobs and companies that you are looking for. And it's hard to know how to do this in a way that's going to be productive, efficient, and also doable for you. And that you can have somebody to bounce off of to know that you're doing it in a way that would be considered professional. Networking is also huge. Just it's just one word, but honestly, that's kind of crucial key. We'll be getting touching base on that multiple times throughout this webinar, so I'm not even going to get into it now. Continue learning and interviewing, the interview process, which in tech can oftentimes include a behavioral interview as well as a technical interview, and how that has evolved with the advent of AI, which has changed the game in terms of how a lot of the roles are interviewed for technically. And mindset management, which again is one of those priceless things that can make or break your ability to get a job in this market. A lot of times in our program, the most successful students just kept going for it. And a lot of that is knowing that you will have times where you're going to be overwhelmed. You will have times where you're going to feel disheartened. That is unfortunately a part of job searching. But if you know that and accept that, and you have a whole support network behind you, then that can make a huge difference and enable you to make this happen. And a lot of this has to do, this networking idea, this prospecting idea, this idea that you are connecting to human beings, has to do with the hidden job market. Matt Johnquist did an interview with NPR, and they manage a major ATS system, which some of you may know of as the thing that is looking through your resume for keywords and then putting you into piles. Not always our favorite, but is a reality of modern job searching. They did massive surveys of companies and found that up to 70% of jobs don't even make it to job boards. So, a big secret that enables our students to get jobs is finding human connections, going to job fairs and connecting with companies that may not even have job openings for what they're looking for. But then that company pops up 2 months later and said, we loved you and we have you in our network. We would rather not put the job posting up and be bombarded by strangers. We would rather go with somebody that we're comfortable with, that we've already made a connection to. Are you available? And that is, you know, a story that we've seen time and time again through multiple students of ours. And so tapping into this job market that isn't even visible on the job postings is a lot of what all of this has to do with the networking, the prospecting, how to find the jobs, etc. And I have some little written reviews from our students here that I'm just going to touch on real quick. This is Sabrina Welch, who's a recent hiree within the past 2 months. She said, completing the UI UX designer track through Skillcrush provided me the solid foundation and design principles, but it's my background in psychology and experience as a former school counselor that truly sets me apart. Armed with deep understanding of human behavior and a commitment to empathy-driven design, I approach each project with warmth, resilience, and meticulous attention to detail. So that's a great example of somebody really kind of bringing in, she's a career pivoter, which as I've heard from Rob, that a lot of you are. And she has gone through to really hone in on her story and telling it in a way that's compelling and straightforward. And this was after, you know, a lot of coaching. And Allison Holland, I was so happy to see when she landed a role. And it ended up being with her own job, but she was making those connections with her own company. So sorry, with her own company, and I believe so. I don't know if you wanted to clarify, David. Um,
I mean, she used to work for the University of Minnesota. Now she works for another wing of the university. So so she was able to like strategize a networking sort of like pathway to get an introduction to the person hiring for this role. Yeah. So
mhm,
yeah, but a different role, a new role, sort of outside of her prior uh, what she was doing previously, and in a slightly different like wing of the university. But the human connection, the networking, the presentation of her value proposition for this new role was key.
mhm. Yeah. And they didn't have that role open at first, but then when they did, you know, her finding her way to be connected to the people who were key in getting that role landed were what made a big difference. And then this is Chelsea Day, and she landed a job with us about a year ago, but I just really love her distillation of how she thanked our career coaches and said, "You were incredibly supportive, informative, and fantastic about pushing me out of my comfort zone to find the right position." A lot of this is really putting yourself out there. It's a very vulnerable process, and that's why it helps so much to have support and a team behind you as you do that process time and time and time again. So the Get Hired track, I just wanted to touch on. It's 6 months of live job search support in our program. And it's $999 for a one-time payment, and then it's $199 for monthly payments. And you can access our partners through Affirm and Clauda, I believe, and they will do a soft credit check and provide you plans based on that, if you would like to go through their plans as well. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing now, and then we're gonna move on to some of our testimonials from the alums of our program.
Thank you so much, Tori. As you do that, I just want to highlight there was so much great information there. And I love like that you commented also on the vulnerability aspect, because I actually saw that in a lot of the questions that were pre-submitted for this event where people were like, I'm putting myself out there, nothing's happening, like that feels bad. And I think that's I love that Skill Crush is focusing on that as part of the program, because I think that is so important to realize that, this isn't personal, but you have to also look at that. And I love also some of the things that you just highlighted there. I think it was Serena was her name, that pivoting aspect, as you said, because there were lots of folks that wrote in saying, hey, I'm looking to pivot. And I love that while she's now moving into a technical field, it was actually those other roles, the kind of so-called soft skills or those personal skills that she learned in education, in psychology, I
Mhm.
believe, that are able to kind of push her to the front. So I think
Mhm.
that's great. And as you said, we were hoping to interview an alum of the program who unfortunately had a last minute commitment. We will be doing these events on a regular basis, though. So we're definitely going to be looking to interview an alum coming up, hopefully sometime in August. So everyone stay tuned for that. But yeah, for now, I'd love to hear some of these other testimonials from folks in that were walked through the program.
All right, awesome. So yeah, you're going to hear from them, and all of the people that I'll be highlighting are career pivoters. That's actually our specialty at Skillcrush, because we teach the skills and then have been helping students land their first jobs in tech for the past 10 years now. The launch that we're having now with the Get Hired track is now open for everybody, including mid-level, between beginning and mid-level, and more advanced people. And we feel very confident in that aspect, considering that our specialty has been people who haven't even started with us with experience in tech. But we know that, and actually I can really highlight this from my personal story and questions about resumes in a little bit later, but all all experience is so relevant in tech, but how to present that and how to market that is something that is it's not as natural to do, and that's one of the reasons why it helps to have people behind you. Okay, so let's get into the testimonials.
Hi, my name is Anna. I am a project manager slash front end developer, and this is my Skillcrush story. So before
We were worried about this. Okay. Let's see.
Hi, my name is Anna. I am a project manager slash front end developer, and this is my Skillcrush story. So before I got to Skillcrush, I was a librarian for several years in the Southwest. As fulfilling as it is and how important the work is, the very last job that I had, it was not challenging, and I really like to be challenged, and I needed more. One day I was on Instagram and one of your quizzes popped up. I got front-end developer, and when I read the description, I was like, this is exactly me. That just totally changed my whole trajectory. I immediately enrolled in the Break Into Tech program with the Get Hired track. I was immediately blown away by the design of the course. I really enjoyed all the videos, all of the extra resources, especially the community on Slack. There were so many resources people were posting. All of the Skillcrush instructors were on it. They were always answering all the questions in a very timely manner. It took me about 5 months to complete the courses for Break Into Tech, and then I jumped right into the Get Hired track. The most impressive part was the structure and all of the rich resources. I went through all those steps and completely redid my resume, completely redid my LinkedIn page, and I just felt like I had all the tools I needed. I really, really feel like the Get Hired track completely set me up for success for that entire process. I am a front-end developer, but the official title is a project manager at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. I work for the philanthropy team in digital marketing, and I basically work on email campaigns and on some of the websites. I am extremely satisfied with my work, with my job. I work for a wonderful nonprofit that is changing lives, and I am constantly challenged every single day. I am never bored. I am always learning new things, and it almost doubled my salary from my previous career as a librarian, which sort of is still blowing my mind. With that salary bump, I can enjoy things. I can travel. I can finally start dreaming of saving up for a home. So I just feel like all these dreams that I had sort of given up on, I can go back to and start working on. I got this job 2 or 3 weeks before I turned 40. I was living in the Southwest, but the job was in New England. And at this age, it completely changed my life. And I feel like it's never too late. It's never too late. If you have the time and the resources, it doesn't take that much time. It doesn't take that many resources. And you can do this. I keep thinking to where I was a year ago, and I never would have guessed in a million years that this is where I would end up.
Right when I decided to enroll in Skillcrush, I was a recipe developer, but I had also done a lot of work in catering and events and personal chefing and just a lot of things in food and hospitality in general. So I was excited to start that job, but then the pandemic happened. I just felt frustrated and battered and bruised by this career that I had chosen, however many decades prior, and I just was ready for a change. So I started doing research on, good, viable job changes, mid-life career. I think I was 42 then. I came across Skillcrush, and I definitely wondered if I would be cut out for it. I've always kind of seen myself as a little bit more old school versus like super, tech savvy or things like that. With Skillcrush, the program and the people and the instructors, everybody just made it seem that anybody can do it, no matter your age, no matter your gender, no matter where you come from, what your background is. So I believed it. I really loved all the coursework. I felt that it really gave me a good variety of code work and exposure to tools and skill sets. I didn't want to be just going through a YouTube syllabus, watching video after video and not really knowing who I could connect or ask questions of. And so that was what drew me into Skillcrush. And when I look back on it, that's what I remember the most is, you're going through, you have a lot of questions, you have real people who get back to you quickly, or you can put it in Slack. I just remember having a lot of connectivity with other people. The Get Hired track, I'm really glad that was an option for me by the time I finished, because so much encouragement, so much support, so much real life, good advice. It was 3 months. I mean, that's pretty incredible that I had another job in 3 months. Like, I can't even believe it sometimes when I look back. The Get Hired track was key for me, I think. So I work for a digital marketing agency based out of Seattle. I'm a junior web developer. Because I work for a marketing agency, we have clients and they all have different setups and different stacks, and it just keeps everything really, really varied. And for me, that's very rewarding. Sometimes in my job, I get a little insecure because I feel like they look at me and they're like, how come this 45-year-old is a junior developer? But that's just me, and that's my own stuff that I'm putting on myself. Ultimately, my boss knows exactly who I am, that I'm a communicator, that I have hospitality and client service skills. And so if I can be a coder who can also talk to the client, then I'm more valuable. I feel great about my career change. People love chefs. Oh, you're a chef. Oh, you're a chef. Oh, you're a chef. But I wasn't fulfilled by it. I wasn't satisfied with it. And so I'm just really proud that I didn't let what I was hold me back. And now I have a career I'm super proud of, super excited by, has tons of potential and possibility. And I love when I get to tell people I'm a web developer. It's the best feeling.
I love this. Thank you. These were so great, Tori, to check out, and I love seeing these career arcs here. And I love also what Emily was saying there, that she was bringing in those skills that she learned in other roles, and that's something that her manager actually really uplifted her for, is that communication skills that are now going with her new technical skills. So yeah, as someone just said in the chat, that's such a great story. Well, and Emily mentioned live Q&A. So why don't we actually move into our live Q&A? I have a whole bunch of questions for you, and we also have David here from the Skillcrush team who's managing the Get Hired Break into Tech programs. So I'm going to kick us off with a question for you, Tori, and obviously feel free to always jump in, David. you went through a lot of those kind of job strategies. We saw all those great things there. But
Mhm.
what if you had to summarize, what are some of those effective job strategies that you're seeing work for folks right now, especially if there seems to be maybe a slower hiring market? I don't know if it's actually a slower hiring market, but that is at least a perception that I think a lot of people have right now.
I would say that it's investing in a long-term strategy of making connections. And that was relevant for me as well, which I'll touch on in a second. But just want to emphasize that this job market, if your experience has been that it's been slower, if you're worried about how AI is affecting hiring, that connection is even more important than before. In my personal experience, my main job transition was that I was hired by a tech company, which is Skillcrush. And I was hired for this role because I was building connections with my mentors and the students as a long-term thing. I was regularly and very active and very present, more so than some other students. And so when the job came up and I applied, I stood out. A lot of students that we've seen get hired, and I just wanted to touch on real quick, if you want to see more testimonials, if you go to our page in our student testimonials, there's 50 stories like the ones you were just seeing. There's more of that if you'd like. But yeah, time and time and time again, they were connecting with a coffee company. I mean, a coffee like that just gets on a Zoom regularly, or they were just going to Power to Fly's networking events, of which there are many highly, really excellent events. And then something would pop up like a month later where somebody would mention this or somebody would mention that, and it would just pan out. And you're like, oh, how could that happen for me? That's just them. But not when we've been seeing this for almost, we're more than 10 years now, that people manufacture their own stories. And they do this by having these things that aren't necessarily applying for the job. They are going out and just being like, my goal is to meet some people. My goal is to talk to some people. It may make me nervous. That may make me feel really uncomfortable, but I'm just gonna do it. And then I have some strategies in place about how to do that. I have a coaching group that I'm gonna see on Thursday, and then I can tell them about how nervous I am and kind of get those jitters out and maybe come up and strategize with them 3 questions I can ask, 3 topics I can talk about so that I feel like I don't know, like I'm not just going in like I don't know where to start. I'm going in like I know exactly where to start. Okay. I just got to do the thing. And you just keep doing that over and over, rinse and repeat until it pans out for you.
I love that. And I love that you were emphasizing story because folks can read your resume. They can go on your Power to Fly profile, your LinkedIn profile, and read kind of in black and white about you. But I love that you're emphasizing through these networking events, that's where you can tell your story. And I love also the idea, and obviously this is what Skill Crush is helping so much with, is that preparedness as well, because we need to make sure that people feel prepared going into that. I was just recently also hosting an event where I said, yeah, why don't you could even use AI to help you there. Say, hey, I'm meeting with such and such company. Give me a few points knowing my background that I should bring up and like use that as a bouncing off point as well. So I think that's great. And you were saying that you stood out to the Skill Crush team when you get hired. And you were also mentioning earlier that a lot of these resumes, they're being looked at by, unfortunately, a few seconds by recruiters, by hiring managers. What is it that makes, and I'm sure this is different every role, but what is it that makes a resume pop? Or does that go back to kind of the networking, the work outside of the resume?
Mm. I think you kind of did touch on a little bit with it's a little bit different for every role. A question that people often ask is like, should I be revising my resume for every single job application? And a quick little answer to that is yes. And especially if you're working in tech, a big part of that is because tech is for all industries. And you may, with us, you would be kind of maybe having a documents that you would be referring to for all of your job experience that you have, and you have clarified and storified that with us. And you may have what is generally applicable for a web developer. And maybe in the past you worked with a health company and you were dealing with electronic health records and HIPAA compliance. And you removed that from your resume because you need it to be concise. You need it to be one page. You need it to tell your story in a very direct way. But the tech company that you're applying for specializes in HIPAA compliant systems. So now you want to bring back that storified version that you've created with Skillcrush of your past experience because it's relevant, but also to emphasize keywords, not only because the hiring manager might be only looking at your resume for a few seconds. They may be using an ATS system that you don't want to get dumped for if you have that relevant experience. So knowing that you should be emphasizing all the software that you use, that you're comfortable with, all of the actionable outcomes of what you've done and how to do that in a way that really tells your story in a quick snapshot. That all of them, your portfolio, your resume, your LinkedIn, and your chances to network are all snapshots of you. And having that be a very clear and concise story is what makes a big
Mhm.
difference. And I just also want to touch on one more thing that I like our clients to think of when they're working with us, that every time you go to networking, it's almost a shortcut to that interview process. When you're just trying to get your resume in and you're trying to get recognized and you're trying to even get in for that interview, and you're like, I know that once they talk to me, they'll know I'm perfect for this job, but you just need them to talk to you. When you're networking, you can sometimes get that right away. You can get placed in front of a hiring manager. You can get placed in front of somebody who's going to help connect you to that hiring manager because they can hear that your experience is so relevant. And don't dismiss that. It can feel like, what am I doing here just chatting? I'm trying to do something serious here. I need to get the job, but you're actually you're doing it. You're doing it right then.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love because we also were touching before on kind of the emotionally draining aspect. And I love also that, yes, it can be emotionally draining. It's like, why am I doing this? But by putting yourself out there, you're also just getting that experience. You're getting those hours in about, oh, this is what I should. And maybe you say one thing and like it doesn't get the best response, and now you know, oh, okay, maybe not say that part next time, right? I've got that. And the other thing that's really striking me hearing you and also watching those great testimonials is that we can often think about tech as like it's tech, like, oh, people want to break into tech, but that's like saying I want to get into sports. Well, do you like baseball? Do you like soccer? Like, there's a lot of different sports. And seeing those designers and web developers in there, like that's a very different skill set than if you're looking to break into data engineering, for example. And you're going to want to be highlighting different things on your
Mhm.
resume depending on where you're looking in. And I love, like, we talked about a lot of things that people should do, but Tori, and then feel free to chime in as well, David. Like, are there anything that people you're seeing that is kind of a common mistake, that things that they're kind of getting wrong, or maybe things they're overlooking? Anything that's like kind of a red flag right now that when people come to you and they're showing you what they have so far, you're like, ooh, okay, let's get rid of that right away.
Do you want
I
to
think,
chime in on this, David?
yeah, I mean, I think generally it's something, it seems like fairly universal. I think, I can see myself having made this mistake in the past, and super common for people coming in and just not understanding what we're talking about. How do you tell your story in a concise and cohesive way, that's going to be compelling to a hiring manager? And I think, oftentimes when we enter these conversations, networking conversations, interviews, it's a very vulnerable place to be coming from when you're looking for a job. And I think, oftentimes we go to this place of like pure honesty. And I think sometimes we end up oversharing, or Rob, as you kind of alluded to, maybe sharing like the wrong aspects. And that's part of what's so, important is this. I mean, I don't know if you use the word iterative, but it is in some ways an iterative process. And is learning which aspects of your story are the ones to tell. Um, how do you tell it again, like a story, in a way that's digestible and understandable and makes sense to someone? And so that's the kind of thing that you get in the program, is we sort of like work with you on that initially, and then it's a process of it's sort of like continually practicing and honing, as you gain more sort of information from the conversations, have new epiphanies about exactly what role you're looking for, where your sort of kind of like secret superpowers really might be, that would fit into the market, revising and honing those stories. But yeah, I think the classic mistake is we had a career coach who used like a dating analogy. It's sort of like, I think people do the interviewing and networking equivalent of like, if you were to go on a first date and lead with all the things, about you that might be unappealing, like your messy car and you don't clean up after yourself. That's not what you don't want to do the job seeking equivalent of that. But I think we have a tendency to do that.
I love that. I think that's spot on. And another question, I think that this one is also for you, David. We had a live question, and feel free to add some more questions into the chat. We'd love to hear from you if you have questions for Tori and David. But we had a question, which is, how can the Get Hired team support someone who already has the skills and experience dealing with the job boards and the recruiters? In this case, what additional value can your team provide to improve their chances of getting hired?
So if I'm understanding the question, this is someone who feels confident in job search strategy. So like we help you kind of like revise your resume. We help you practice interviewing. We help you find roles to apply to. Maybe that's not what you're looking for. I think then the value proposition is, it's accountability, and it's community. And I think it's another set of its eyes to look at these sets of materials that you feel confident in, and just perhaps it's 98% there, but we see something else that we can maybe tweak that makes the difference. Does that, Rob? I'm not reading the question, but does that sound like that
Yeah,
feel like
no,
it's
that
answering
that
it?
that
Yeah,
sounds great. And
yeah.
another question or comment that actually came in much earlier in the conversation, Tori, I'll throw this one over to you because this is actually making me think of David's dating analogy. Because if you're on a date, right, you don't want to be talking the whole time. You also want to learn about the person you're with, right? And this person was asking about, how do you identify the company culture? They thought they landed a good check tech job, and in the end, the all male team there isolated them from opportunities in doing that complex tech. So
Mhm.
maybe you think, oh, wait, I finally got it. This is the dream job. But are you sure like that company's culture is aligned with yours? How do you determine that during the interview process or during the process
Mhm.
in general?
Yes. So for my personal experience with Skillcrush's career coaches, they gave me some really great strategies to kind of introduce my values into the interview process and gauge from there. One of those being that I am a queer woman, and instead of having to like come out to every hiring team, which is maybe too much, just kind of throw in that one of my favorite tech seminars and also just kind of communities is Lesbians Who Tech, and I love going to them every year. And this is where I heard this great talk from Sam Altman was there like last year or something, and then just kind of gauging the room and how people respond. For example, in their um, all male team, maybe kind of throwing out that like they are part of, if you are, and this is relevant for your experience, like one of the things that makes me a great team player is my all women's um like soccer team that I play with on weekends, and then highlighting examples from that. Or also not being afraid to be direct. So there I kind of introduce like a kind of sideline kind of thing. But also, it's very much like you're not just there for them to ask you questions. You're there to ask questions as well, and feeling empowered to say diversity and having, the voices of people of different genders and different backgrounds is really important to me. How does your company address that? How do they bring it in, and listening to their response and taking that into an account? Because it's not just about finding a job. We're here to help you find a job that you're going to be really happy with. And there's ways to make that happen. And if you go in to a dating, to speed dating, and you're just letting them ask you questions, you're not going to get as much
Mhm.
out of that process as if you are asking them questions as well.
I love that. Yeah, one key question I would ask, especially, is what kind of ERGs, what kind of employee resource groups do you have at your company? Because if you are a parent, for example, and like you want to know, is there a parent ERG? And they all say, no, we sleep at the office. Like we're here 12 hours a day. It's like, oh, okay, wait a second. That's a big red
Mhm.
flag, right? So knowing, is there a Black Excellence ERG? Is there a Pride ERG? Like that will help you know what are those resources there. Because not only will
Yes.
that show whether or not that company is inclusive, but those are also going to be really valuable resources for you to upskill and grow professionally once you're
Mm.
there as well. So I
Yes.
I, I
That's
love
great.
like the idea of doing that research. And we have a few
And that's
questions. Oh, yeah, go
sorry, I just
ahead. Go
wanted to
ahead.
say, Rob, I love that because that's a concrete thing. They could say all sorts of stuff. They could say like,
Yeah,
we're the best, of course. Everybody feels comfortable here. But if they have ERGs, that means that there's some extra concrete effort that went into creating that space for people.
I love that. Yeah. And we have a few questions in the chat about remote work. Daniel was asking, what skill can I learn that can help me get a remote role within the next 6 months, and maybe even apart from tech? And kind of on the same note, similar note, Victoria was asking, with the trend of return to office, what suggestions are there for finding remote roles? This market is very competitive right now, which it totally is. Well, first off, I'll say, if you also go to Power to Fly, you can search for remote positions right on Power to Fly as well. And some of those are global remote. I know we have a very global group here. Some are remote specific to a region, so you need to be in like the Northeast US, for example, but it's still remote as long as you live within that region. So you do have to look at the fine print, but lots of remotes, hundreds, if not, well, thousands of remote roles that we have here on Power to Fly. But I throw it out to either of you who want to take this. Are there any specific tips for looking at remote roles specifically?
Um, I don't know if I have a great answer to like specifically finding a remote role. I do tend to encourage people to open up the search, um, because I think that interviews tend to be almost always in the initial stages remote these days, and interview practice I think is good. It is a competitive market. I do think a lot of people are focused on remote. That said, I think that people who I think in our program I'm seeing folks who don't necessarily they're focused specifically on remote, but the roles end up being remote anyway. To the question of sort of like, and I recognize this is not, we're talking about people who are searching for roles with technical skills, like front end developers, full stack developers, UI UX designers. So technical skill sets like that can help you find that remote role. Yeah, I don't know the person who was asking that question about which skill set exactly where they're coming from, but yeah, I mean, um, I don't know that I have anything that isn't somewhat obvious. I think it's, if you have a technical skill set, I think that increases your chances.
Thank you, David. And I would also say to anyone who's looking for remote roles, sometimes you do have to, look at trade-offs as well. Like maybe this is super remote, super flexible, but the pay is a little less. But I think you can kind of take that into account. Is that something that is a trade-off for you in that regard? Sometimes also, I think looking at smaller companies, those might be more willing to be remote and flexible in that way than a larger company. But of course, like a larger company might have more opportunity for career growth, like more way to go up the ladder. So I think kind of weighing all that, like what do you value? Do you value that flexibility, or do you value being a director like in a year's time? Like I think will come into there. Love all these questions. Stuff is pouring in. So lots of, well, this is a question everyone is asking right now, and Power to Fly has done a million webinars on it. But I'd love to ask, either of you, what's your take on AI affecting the job market? Should people be worried? Do we feel safe? So yeah, the hot question of the moment, it seems.
I'm so glad you brought that one in. I can see that from Mitchell over there, and that was exciting to me because I'm actually really into the AI transition. It's the shorthand of there on Harvard Business, and this was a part of an article, which was AI is not going to replace you, but a person with AI will replace you is kind of the underlying theme, that it's changing the game of how we work, but is it replacing us? Not so much. In fact, in a lot of ways, it is highlighting even more what we as unique humans can bring to these roles, which technical roles are not as much about applying the technical skills in a hard way all day and night as you might think. It's just so much about balancing the needs of your users, your stakeholders, the company and its priorities, and being able to utilize your human emotions in order to understand what to prioritize and how to approach it in a way that's going to be doable. And as I touched on earlier, tech is not just made to just float by itself and look really cool. It's made for humans to use, and applying that, it makes you much more effective at making good tech. So knowing how to use the AI tools is a big part of what we highly encourage at Skillcrush now. How to use them just while tapping into these AI models, and then how to tap into what your specific industry, whether it be cybersecurity or web development, and how the professionals in that area are using it to enable their workflows to be more streamlined, is really key. And that is a requirement for a lot of hiring managers nowadays. And so we're at Skillcrush, we teach some of those skills as well, specifically for web developers. And that is a story that's been told time and time again in the tech world. Every 5 years, maybe 10, there's a big, massive revolution. And if that excites you and you can like just jump onto that flying carpet, you're going to be solid. That's what helps keep you in high demand. That's what helps keep you high paid, to excitedly embrace these revolutions and know how to turn them to your advantage.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and someone from in the marketing, but kind of the non-technical side, yes, AI is definitely such a big role, part of the roles right now, and everything I'm seeing. And the good thing is, a lot of these tools are free, and you can just putter around on them and learn a lot by doing as well. Some one question, a couple of questions that we actually had pre-submitted. I love to touch on this topic because I think Emily actually in the one video kind of hinted at some of this. One person was saying, I worked in cybersecurity, ready to move into another employer role. I'm 10 years from retirement. How do I position myself to compete with junior professionals? And someone was also asking how to break into the tech field for folks that are 50 years and older. So, what is kind of Skill Crush doing for kind of these older professionals in that way?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we do have older folks who come through and are getting the jobs, and I think it's similar to um, someone who doesn't come from other sort of like profiles are not the traditional young sort of like educated in a certain way people who are trying to get into tech, and I do think that I mean, I'll say this. I think there are people who value, if you're older and you've been working, I think that there's a certain wisdom that comes with that, and that's sort of like part of your value proposition. So much of it, excuse me, is about figuring out like what is the specific kind of like unique value proposition I have for someone who's going to hire me, and I think that like life experience can often be that. Yeah, so I think it's about just figuring out how to tell that story and how to appeal to the right people with it.
Yeah, I would think the other part that I've heard when we've done uh, other events on this subject is make it clear yes, I have 30 years of experience, but I'm not looking to be a manager. So sometimes people are just look at the experience level and they go, oh, this person, well, of course they want to be a senior director, but maybe you want to be an individual contributor. Maybe you're making that pivot. So in your storytelling during your networking, make sure people know, yes, I have all this experience, but I really want to be doing the hands-on technical work. I'm not interested in being a manager. And then people go, oh, okay, like now this person can use those life skills, but in a different way. So again, going back to that storytelling aspect.
Yeah, exactly. And there are ways to position your resume and your LinkedIn to sort of emphasize that or make sure that's the story that's being read.
I love it. And Grace has a great question here. I've never heard this question, but it's something I feel like I hear people encountering all the time. They are asking, is there any good way to figure out what job listings are ghost job positions? I try to go to companies' websites for confirmation, but I'd love to hear other tips on that in top of in-person networking. Any thoughts?
I mean, I think that when you're seeing, on any of the job boards or on LinkedIn, you're seeing sort of a role that's just always there. That's usually a sign that if it's just like it might not be actively hiring. It's something that was bought as part of a package, advertising a role, or it's just sort of like they're continuing to collect resumes in their repository, but not acting on it. I think trying to find, maybe they suggest this, like a cross reference for it. If you see a posting coming up on a job board, going to that company website, checking out their careers page is another great way to go about it. But yeah, to me, it's sort of like when you see a company sort of like flooding a job board with a posting that is usually that can be a red flag.
Thank you so much. And so again, maybe a question for you, David. Stephanie was asking, does the program offer kind of any guarantees in participating? What are there things like that? Or and I know one thing that you mentioned too is even with the 6 months program, you can also access everything, some of the other trainings
Yeah.
for lifetime. So maybe you can also talk about that as well.
Yeah, so just to explain, yeah, the sort of like the dashboard, it's like the classes, the online classes are something when you purchase the course, it's sort of like you have access to a dashboard with all the classes, the templates, the cheat sheets, the checklists that we walk you through filling out in that dashboard that you have lifetime access to. So you purchase that, and then along with it, you purchase 6 months of sort of like live career support and people who can sort of like, yeah, we can help you walk through those, answer questions, there are feedback challenges, and then we mentioned these weekly groups that you're in, career groups that you're in for 6 months. Yeah, it's interesting. We did have a job guarantee at one point. One of the reasons, and ultimately one of the reasons we took it away is because it felt like people were um, actually like sort of like checking boxes to qualify for the job guarantee in a more perfunctory way than they were sort of, authentically job searching. um, and so I think that, yeah, we I think have strategies that work. I think we have, coaching methodologies that work, but I think everyone's specific backgrounds and specific set of goals make everyone's journey, like, in some ways unique. And I think it's helpful to have the flexibility to adjust and sort of like differentiate to the person who you're working with. So I think we don't have any explicit guarantee, but I think the vast majority of people who come through are really satisfied with the program.
And you can watch all those
And you
testimonials
can and
that
you can check out the
you
testimonials. Yeah,
said.
I dropped
And
I dropped a link in the chat earlier
I
on.
saw, yeah, folks can check that out. And last question, because we have to start wrapping up, but Tori, I'll throw it back to you for the last word here. As someone who works for a startup, Mitchell was just asking in the chat, are startups a good place for one to start a tech to career? Why or why not? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a pretty vast question because it can vary so much from startup to startup. I will say that from my personal experience, it's been fantastic. And Skillcrush is a fantastic company who really prioritizes their employees and treats them well. And it's a very exciting place to be because usually there's you have a lot of say, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of ability to really get involved because they're a startup and they're getting going. And I love that. And then you may also prefer, like companies often are more established in the way they're doing things, very insular. They may not, depending on the company, again, that's why I really want to emphasize it varies from company to company. They may not have as much cross-reference between teams and things like that. And just to touch on real quick, the most common place that our students get hired is that are career pivoters, just emphasizing that students who have gone through our Break into Tech program are at marketing agencies, government agencies, and ed tech, and higher education, not commonly startups, which tend to kind of, if you're a career pivoter, can sometimes have a lot higher criteria for the advanced technical skills, and because they need people who are just getting their production, just producing. Whereas with companies, established companies, there's a lot more of kind of balancing all the human things that need to go into it and fine tuning and the marketing and everything to really just keep really established. So it can be a very different environment. But yeah, most of our students are actually not going for startups and are hired in other industries and for technical roles.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, and we actually had a pre-submitted question about someone who wanted to break out of academia. So it's interesting to hear that ed tech is such a core part of where people are getting hired to. So that person, if they're listening, can check that out. And I love all the advice that both of you have shared. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us today for these wonderful questions, whether you shared them live or whether you pre-submitted them. Thank you for sharing all your information in the chat. As Tori was saying, so much of this is about networking. So we hope that just having these, aside from the amazing advice our speakers are bringing, is just an opportunity for us as like-minded professionals to come together, network, build those networks, build those skills together. So thank you so much. If you enjoyed today, we will be hosting another event with the Skill Crush team coming up in August. So please check Power to Fly's website for any updates on that. And we also host regular events almost every day of the week, it seems. So always check us out there at powertofly.com. Thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you at the next event.